My father stood up at my wedding reception, straightened his tie, and handed me an invoice. Not a card, not a toast written on a cocktail napkin. An invoice, printed on Andrew's hardware letterhead, the same paper he used to bill customers for drill bits and drywall screws. He walked it over to the head table like a process server at a dinner party, laid it in front of me between the champagne flute and the buttercream cake, and said, "It's time we settled up, sweetheart." 140 guests went silent. My new husband's hand found my knee under the tablecloth. I looked down at the total. $240,000, the cost of raising me, itemized and due in full. But here's what none of them knew. I had an envelope too. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. I'm Hannah, and I'm 32 years old. This is the story of the night my parents tried to turn my wedding into a collection agency. If you've ever had someone put a price tag on your love, if you've ever been told you owe a debt you never agreed to, this one's going to hit home. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I should start at the beginning. Christmas morning, 2004. I was 10. Most kids tore through wrapping paper without thinking twice. I wasn't most kids. My father sat in his recliner with a yellow legal pad and a calculator, and as my sister Megan and I opened each gift, he read the price out loud. Barbie Dream House, $42, art set, $18, bicycle, $109. When we finished, he added it up, tapped the calculator twice, and announced to the room, $347 worth of Christmas. My mother, Denise, nodded like he'd just read the weather report. Megan was 7. She didn't understand. I did. I understood that the bicycle wasn't a gift. It was a line item. That was the year I stopped asking for things. The next summer, I wanted to go to band camp. Flute. I'd been practicing for months, borrowed a school instrument, taught myself from YouTube videos before YouTube was even good. My father pulled out the brochure, circled the tuition, and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet. $600 we'll never see again, he said. He let me go, but the number stayed on the fridge for 2 years, curling at the edges, yellowing in the sun, like a warrant nobody bothered to serve. My mother kept a spiral notebook in the kitchen drawer. Blue cover, college ruled. I found it once when I was looking for a pen. Each page had a name at the top. Mine. Megan's. Columns of numbers running down the margins. Dates, amounts, categories. She'd been tracking what we cost since we were born. I put the notebook back. I didn't say anything. I thought every family was like this. I thought love came with a receipt. Chillicothe, Ohio. Population 30,000, give or take. It's the kind of town where everyone knows your business and half of them have opinions about it. My father, Gary Andrews, owned Andrews Hardware on Main Street. 40 years in the same building, same creaking floors, same bell over the door. His father, Paul Andrews, opened it in 1962. Paul was a hard man. Raised 5 kids on hardware store wages during the 70s and 80s, and he never let any of them forget the cost. Nothing's free, Paul used to say, not even family. Gary was the youngest of 5. He was also the only one who stayed. His brothers scattered. Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Louisville. His sister Margaret moved to Dayton. Gary stayed because staying meant inheriting the store, and inheriting the store meant inheriting Paul's philosophy along with it. He married my mother when they were both 19. She was pregnant with me. Denise had been taking classes at the community college, early childhood education, if you can believe the irony, but she dropped out after the wedding. Never went back. They moved into a 3-bedroom ranch on Vine Street, 4 blocks from the store. The house had green shutters and a chain-link fence, and a garage so full of old inventory that nobody had parked a car in it since 1998. That was the world I grew up in. A world where generosity was a myth, and every dollar had a memory attached to it. My father didn't hug us goodnight. He calculated our overhead. And my mother, who might have been different in another life, who might have been the kind of mother who baked cookies without mentioning the cost of butter, became his bookkeeper instead. Not for the store. For us. The summer before my senior year, my father called a family meeting. This was unusual. Family meetings in the Andrews house meant someone was in trouble or someone needed money, and those were often the same thing. He sat at the kitchen table with a manila folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed on Andrew's hardware letterhead. He called it the Family Investment Agreement. I read it twice. The language was clumsy. My father never went to college. But the meaning was clear. It stated that Gary and Denise Andrews had invested significant financial resources in the upbringing of Hannah Marie Andrews, and that upon achieving financial independence, Hannah would make reasonable efforts to repay the family investment. There was a signature line at the bottom. 2, actually. One for him, one for me. "It's just a formality," he said. "So we're all on the same page." My mother stood at the counter, drying a dish that was already dry. She didn't look at me. I was 17. I needed help with the gap between my scholarship and tuition. Refusing meant no help. Not that the help would be much, maybe $2,000. But it was the principle. Or rather, it was the threat. I signed it. I knew even then it wasn't legally binding. A minor, under duress, signing a contract with no specific terms and no consideration. It wouldn't survive 5 minutes in court. But I signed it because fighting cost more than agreeing, and I'd learned that math early. What I remember most isn't the document. It's Megan. She was 14, standing in the hallway, half hidden behind the door frame, watching. She didn't say anything, but the look on her face wasn't sympathy. It was something closer to inventory, like she was taking notes. I got into Ohio State. Full ride for tuition, but room and board were on me. I worked 2 jobs, barista at a campus coffee shop from 5 to 9 in the morning, data entry at an insurance office 3 evenings a week. I ate a lot of ramen. I studied in the library because my apartment was too cold in winter and too hot in summer. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA and sat for the CPA exam the month after commencement. Passed it on the first try. My father's reaction: "Well, that's one investment that paid off." No congratulations, no card. Just a return on investment assessment delivered over the phone while he was stocking shelves. My first real job was at a mid-size firm in Columbus. Salary: $58,000. Not rich, but real. Steady. The kind of money that meant I could breathe. 3 months in, my father called. His truck had thrown a rod. He needed a new transmission. Could I help? I sent $500 that afternoon. Didn't think twice. He was my dad. His truck was how he got to work. That was September 2019. By November, there was another call. The store needed a new water heater. By January, Megan needed textbook money. By March, the property tax bill was overdue. I sent money every time. Direct deposit, no questions. After the second year, I started keeping a spreadsheet. Not because I was angry, because I'm a CPA. Tracking money is what I do. It was a professional habit, nothing more. I created a file called Family Transfers. Columns, date, amount, purpose, payment method, running total. At the time, I thought I was just being organized. I didn't know I was building evidence. Year 3, my father called about the store roof. $14,200. He didn't ask. He presented it like weather. Inevitable, impersonal, already decided. The contractor says it has to be done before winter. You know I can't float that. I moved money from my savings into his account that Friday. He said, "That's what family does." He did not say thank you. Year 4, Megan's car died. A 2009 Civic with 200,000 miles that finally gave up on the interstate outside Circleville. My mother called. "Your sister needs reliable transportation for work." Megan worked part-time at the store, 20 hours a week, cash under the table. I sent $3,800 for a used Corolla. Year 5, my father's knee. Surgery, recovery. 6 weeks off work. He had insurance, but the deductible and co-pays added up. $9,400. I paid it in 2 installments. He never mentioned it again. Year 6 was the renovation. The store needed new flooring, new shelving, updated electrical. $22,000. I dipped into my emergency fund for the first time. Sat in my apartment in Columbus staring at my bank balance afterward, doing the math on what I had left versus what I'd need if my own car died or my own roof leaked. The spreadsheet grew. I added a column I hadn't planned on. Acknowledged? It tracked whether anyone, my father, my mother, Megan, anyone, had said thank you, or even confirmed they received the money. I scrolled through the column after the renovation payment. Every single row said the same thing. No, 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 no. 47 transfers over 6 years and not one acknowledgement. I do math for a living, and the math wasn't adding up. Thanksgiving, year 7. I drove down to Chillicothe because that's what you do. You drive 3 hours on I-71 with a pecan pie on the passenger seat, and you pretend that everything is fine because it's easier than admitting it isn't. The house smelled like turkey and resentment. Megan was in the kitchen, on her phone, leaning against the counter like she owned the place. She didn't know I was in the hallway. Her voice carried. She got the degree. She got out. The least she can do is pay us back. I stopped walking. I stood there with my coat still on and my car keys digging into my palm, and I listened to my little sister reduce my entire life to a transaction. She wasn't wrong about the facts. I did get the degree. I did get out. But the framing, the least she can do, turned every dollar I'd ever sent into an obligation instead of a choice. Dinner was worse. Denise opened with, "Must be nice to eat at restaurants every week." I'd posted a photo of dinner with a coworker at a Thai place. Pad Thai, $12. My father waited until dessert. "You know, the agreement still stands." He said it casually, the way you'd mention the weather or the score of a game, like it was a fact of nature, not a threat. I drove back to Columbus that night. 3 hours in the dark, no music, just the highway and my thoughts. When I got home, I opened the spreadsheet. I added a new column. I called it, "What They Think I Owe." Then I started filling it in, using the numbers from my mother's spiral notebook, which I'd memorized years ago without meaning to. The ledger was growing, but now I had 2 of them. I met Derek Hollis at a 4th of July barbecue in Westerville. His college buddy hosted it. My coworker dragged me there. Derek was standing by the grill arguing about brisket rub with a man twice his size, and he was losing the argument with so much good humor that I liked him before he even turned around. He was 32. Construction engineer. Built things for a living. Bridges, overpasses, the kind of structures that hold weight without cracking. There's a metaphor in there, but I'll let you find it. His parents, Frank and Carol Hollis, lived in Dublin, Ohio. Frank was retired from the Postal Service. Carol was a retired teacher. The first time I went to their house for dinner, Carol hugged me at the door and said, "I made too much lasagna, so you have to take some home." Nobody mentioned what it cost. Nobody calculated the grocery bill. Nobody slid a receipt across the table. I almost cried into the garlic bread. Derek proposed in October of the following year. Simple ring, back porch, no audience. I said yes before he finished the question. We planned the wedding ourselves. Paid for it ourselves. $28,000 for the Elks Lodge in Chillicothe, a DJ, a caterer, flowers, and enough champagne to get through whatever my parents had planned. My parents wanted guest list control. My father called it our share of the invitations. I said no. He called Derek directly. "You're getting a bargain," he told my future husband. "We put a lot into that girl." Derek told me about the call that night. He was confused. I wasn't. I'd been hearing that language my whole life. The language of investment, return, depreciation. My father talked about me the way he talked about inventory. If you've ever had a parent treat your wedding like a shareholder meeting, or if you've ever sent money home only to be told it's never enough, type, "I know this feeling," in the comments. And if you're wondering what happened when I opened that envelope at my reception, stick with me, because what my parents didn't know could fill a spreadsheet. And it did. 3 months before the wedding, my Aunt Margaret called. Margaret was my father's older sister. She'd moved to Dayton decades ago, married a dentist, lived a quiet life. We talked maybe twice a year. Birthdays and holidays. She called to congratulate me. Then she said something that rearranged my understanding of my own family. "I'm so glad you're doing well, honey. Your father says you haven't helped much with the store, but I know you've been busy building your career." I held the phone away from my face and stared at it. He said I haven't helped much? Well, you know your dad. He worries. He says the store's been struggling and you've been a little distant. I thanked her. I hung up. Then I called my cousin Rachel in Cincinnati. Same story. Gary told her I was doing well but hadn't contributed to the family. He painted me as the daughter who got out and forgot where she came from. I sat at my desk in my apartment, the one I'd furnished from Target sales and Craigslist finds because I'd been sending 30% of my income south for 7 years, and I realized what was happening. My parents weren't just taking my money, they were rewriting the story. To the extended family, I was the ungrateful one, the one who left and never looked back. They'd positioned themselves as the struggling parents of an absent daughter, and I'd been too busy writing checks to notice. I opened my spreadsheet. I added a notes column. I started documenting every conversation. Dates, names, what was said. And then, because a bill came in the mail, I paid another $4,100 for my father's liability insurance premium. Force of habit. The most expensive habit I'd ever had. 1 week before the wedding, I drove down to Chillicothe. Derek would follow in 2 days with his parents. I booked a room at the Holiday Inn Express on North Bridge Street. My mother was offended. "We have a guest room," she said on the phone. "It has clean sheets." "I need space to work on last-minute details, Mom. It's not personal." It was personal. I couldn't sleep under that roof and stay sane at the same time. The week was tense in the way only small-town family weeks can be. Denise had opinions about the centerpieces, the seating chart, the font on the programs. She wanted the pastor from her church, not the one Derek and I had chosen. She wanted Ave Maria during the processional. She wanted to be in charge of something she hadn't paid for. My father was oddly cheerful. That was the tell. Gary Andrews was not a cheerful man. He was steady, predictable, grim in the way that hardware store owners in small Ohio towns are grim. But that week he smiled too much. He patted his jacket pocket. He whistled in the store. Something was coming. On Wednesday, I stopped by the store to drop off programs. Megan was behind the counter. She had a FedEx receipt crumpled next to the register. "Picking up a print job?" I asked. She shoved the receipt in a drawer. "None of your business." Thursday, Derek's parents arrived from Dublin. Carol brought 3 dozen cookies in a tin shaped like a barn. She hugged me in the hotel lobby and said, "I'm so happy for you too." Frank shook my hand, then hugged me too. "Welcome to the family, kiddo." 2 families, 2 approaches. One gave you cookies. The other was printing something at FedEx. The rehearsal dinner was at Old Canal Smokehouse, a rib joint on Yaktangi Parkway with picnic tables and paper towel rolls instead of napkins. Derek's choice. I loved him for it. 40 people, family, wedding party, a few close friends. The brisket was perfect. The coleslaw was better. Frank Hollis stood up first. He wasn't a polished speaker. He held a Bud Light in one hand and a napkin in the other, and he said, "Derek, you found a good one. Hannah, you found a stubborn one. That's the recipe." Everyone laughed. Carol dabbed her eyes. It was simple and warm and exactly right. Then my father stood up. The room shifted. Not visibly. It was more like a barometric change, the way the air gets heavy before a storm. Gary buttoned his jacket. He cleared his throat. "Raising Hannah was the greatest investment Denise and I ever made," he said. The word landed like a stone in a pond. Investment, not joy, not privilege, not blessing. Investment. He kept going. "Some investments take decades to mature. You put in the capital, you do the work, you wait. And when they finally pay off, well." He paused, looked at Denise, looked at me. When they do, it's time to collect. He winked. Denise smiled. Megan raised her glass. The room laughed, mostly. A few people exchanged glances. Aunt Margaret tilted her head. Carol's smile tightened at the edges. After dinner, walking to the car, Derek took my hand. Was your dad joking? I thought about the jacket pocket. I thought about the FedEx receipt. I thought about 32 years of line items and ledgers, and a childhood measured in dollars instead of memories. I don't think so, I said. The hotel lobby was empty except for a vending machine humming in the corner and Megan sitting on a faux leather couch near the elevator. It was 10:30. Derek had gone upstairs. I was getting ice. She was waiting for me. I knew that before she opened her mouth. Hannah. She said my name the way a doctor says it before delivering test results. Flat. Practiced. Mom and Dad have something planned for the reception. I set the ice bucket on the counter. What kind of something? A presentation about making things right. She crossed her legs. She was wearing the same boots she'd worn since college, the ones I'd paid for after she maxed out her credit card. There's an envelope. It's itemized. I let that word sit. Itemized. Not heartfelt. Not emotional. Itemized. Are you warning me? I asked. Or preparing me? She stood up, straightened her jacket, looked at me with an expression I'd been trying to decode for 29 years. Not quite hostility, not quite pity. Something in between. I'm telling you so you're not blindsided. I'm not on your side, Hannah. I'm just not cruel. She walked toward the stairwell. At the door, she stopped, turned her head just enough for me to see the corner of her mouth. You always land on your feet, Hannah. You always do. The door closed behind her. I stood in the lobby holding a plastic ice bucket, listening to the vending machine hum, and I thought about the word itemized. I thought about the FedEx receipt. I thought about my father's cheerful whistling and his hand patting his jacket pocket. They'd printed it, formatted it, planned the delivery. My wedding reception was going to be an ambush. The question was, what I was going to do about it. Derek was asleep by 11. He slept like a man with nothing on his conscience, flat on his back, one arm off the mattress, breathing steady as a metronome. I envied that. I sat on the edge of the bed in the blue light of my laptop and considered my options. Option 1, confront my parents before the wedding, drive to Vine Street, knock on the door, tell them I knew about the envelope, and if they pulled this stunt, I'd never speak to them again. The problem with option 1 was that it gave them time to adjust. They'd find another moment, another venue, another way to present the bill. Option 2, ignore it. Let my father hand me the envelope, smile, set it aside, and deal with it later. The problem with option 2 was that 140 guests would watch my father present an invoice at my wedding, and my silence would look like acceptance. The room would think I owed that money. The story would set like concrete. Option 3, prepare. Option 3 was the CPA option. I opened my laptop, pulled up the spreadsheet, the file I'd been maintaining for 6 years. Dates, amounts, purposes, payment methods, running totals. I started adding the recent transfers, the insurance premium in September, the furnace repair in November, Megan's credit card payoff in January, the property tax assist in March. I entered each one carefully, double-checking amounts against my bank statements. My hands were steady. They're always steady when I'm working with numbers. Numbers don't have feelings. Numbers don't ambush you at your wedding. Numbers just tell the truth. I saved the file. I looked at the clock. 11:47. I had the data. Now I needed a plan. The CPA in me already had one. The spreadsheet had one tab. I called it Family Transfers. 5 columns: date, amount, purpose, payment method, running total. The first entry was September 14th, 2019. $500. Dad's truck transmission. Zelle. The entries grew from there. Monthly transfers started at $800, then climbed to $1,000, then $1,200, then 2,000 as the requests multiplied and my salary increased. Between the monthly payments were the emergencies, the line items that punched holes in my savings. Store roof, 14,200. Megan's car, 3,800. Dad's knee surgery, 9,400. Store renovation, 22,000. Insurance premium, 4,100. Furnace, 3,200. Megan's credit card, 6,400. Property tax, 8,300. There were smaller ones too. A dental bill here. A car repair there. A short-term loan that was never mentioned again. I scrolled to the bottom of the spreadsheet. I'd never done that before. Not once in 6 years. I tracked the numbers as they came in, entered them, filed them, moved on. I never scrolled to the bottom. I never looked at the total. It sat there in bold, in the cell I'd formatted years ago with a sum formula and a dollar sign, waiting for me to look at it. $267,340. I read it again. $267,340. I'd never added it all up. 8 years of transfers, and I'd never once scrolled to the bottom. I sat in that hotel room and I looked at the number and I felt something shift. Not anger, not grief, something more precise than that. Clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally run the numbers on something you've been paying for without checking the bill. My parents wanted to present me with an invoice for $240,000. I'd already paid more than that. At 2:17 in the morning, I rode the elevator to the lobby in my pajamas. Flannel pants with little foxes on them. Ohio State hoodie, hotel slippers. The night clerk didn't look up. The business center was a closet-sized room next to the ice machine, with a desktop computer from 2019 and a printer that smelled like warm toner. I plugged in my USB drive. I printed 8 pages of spreadsheet data. Every transfer, every date, every amount, every purpose. Each page clean, each column aligned. Then I opened a fresh document and typed the summary. Yearly totals. Cumulative total. A brief description of each major payment. Clear, factual, unemotional. The language of accounting, not accusation. Then the cover page. I centered the text. I chose a professional font. I typed it in bold. Invoice. Services rendered to Gary and Denise Andrews, January 2019 to June 2026. Prepared by Hannah Andrews, CPA. I printed it all. 10 pages total, including the cover and summary. I stapled them in order. I slid them into one of the hotel's complimentary envelopes, the kind they leave at the front desk for forgotten receipts and checkout bills. White, unmarked, ordinary. I sealed it. I held it in my hands. It weighed almost nothing. 10 pages of paper, a few ounces of toner, a staple. But it contained 8 years of transfers that my family had never acknowledged, presented in a format that no one could argue with. I hoped I wouldn't need it. I genuinely, sincerely hoped my father would give his toast, sit down, and let the evening be about the wedding. I hoped Megan was wrong. I hoped the envelope in his jacket was a card. I fell asleep at 3:40 a.m. with the envelope on the nightstand, right next to my rings. Wedding morning. October in southern Ohio, the kind of day that starts cold and burns off into something golden by noon. I woke at 7, showered, ate half a granola bar, and drove to Tina's hotel room for hair and makeup. Tina Marsh was my maid of honor. We'd been friends since freshman orientation at Ohio State. She was the one who lent me a textbook when I couldn't afford it. The one who never asked why I sent money home every month, but always noticed when I was quiet afterward. She was the kind of friend who held your secrets without ever making you feel like they were heavy. She saw the envelope on my bag. What's that? Insurance policy. She didn't push. That was Tina. I put on my dress. A-line, off the shoulder, ivory. $1,800. I'd paid for it myself, and somewhere in my father's records it was probably already a line item, proof of my spending habits, evidence that I could afford to pay his bill. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought about the girl who wasn't allowed to ask for things at Christmas, The girl who ate reduced-price lunch and wore hand-me-downs until she was 14. The girl who signed a contract at 17 because refusing cost more than agreeing. That girl was getting married today. And she was ready. I handed Tina the envelope. If I ask for this during the reception, hand it to me. No questions. Tina took it. She looked at my face for a long time. She was a nurse. She read people the way I read balance sheets, quickly and accurately. Whatever she saw, she didn't argue. No questions, she said. She tucked it into her clutch and zipped it shut. I picked up my bouquet. White peonies. I was ready. Chillicothe Community Church. White clapboard, built in 1887. Stained glass windows that threw colored light across the pews like confetti nobody had to clean up. 140 guests. Both families, friends, co-workers. A handful of my father's hardware store regulars who'd known me since I was stocking shelves at 12. The organ played. Tina walked. The flower girl, Derek's niece, 4 years old and deeply committed to throwing petals at maximum velocity, did her job with enthusiasm. Then it was my turn. My father took my arm at the back of the church. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself feel it. The weight of his hand, the stiffness of his suit. The way he stood a little straighter, a little taller. The way fathers do when the music starts and everyone turns around. For one walk down one aisle, he was the father I wished he'd always been. Proud, present, not calculating. I could feel the stiffness in his jacket pocket. The envelope was there. But I didn't think about that. I thought about the colored light and the music, and Derek standing at the altar with wet eyes and a crooked tie. Derek's vows were simple. I promise to love you without conditions. I promise to never keep score. The church laughed. I didn't. I knew what those words cost. They cost everything to someone who grew up in a house where every kindness came with a receipt. My vows matched his. I promise to love you without conditions. I promise that what we build together will never come with an invoice. My mother dabbed her eyes. My father checked his watch. We kissed. Rice flew. Bells rang. The photographer lined us up outside. Family photos. I smiled. My father smiled. His hand went to his jacket pocket, then back to his side. The Elks Lodge had been transformed. White tablecloths, candles in mason jars, string lights across the ceiling that made the whole room look like it was full of fireflies. The DJ played At Last by Etta James for our first dance. Derek held me close and whispered, "You okay?" I said, "Ask me in an hour." He didn't ask why, he just held me tighter. Toasts came after dinner. Kevin Park, Derek's best man, told a story about Derek building a bookshelf in college that collapsed 3 times before he admitted he'd read the instructions upside down. The room roared. Kevin raised his glass. To a man who never gives up, even when the furniture fights back. Tina stood next. She didn't tell a funny story. She talked about the night I called her after my father's knee surgery. The call wasn't about the money, she said. It was about the fact that he hadn't called to tell me the surgery went well. I'd found out from my mother 2 days later. Hannah gives, Tina said. That's who she is. She gives and gives and gives, and she never asks for a receipt. I saw my father shift in his chair. Then Frank Hollis stood. He wasn't on the toast list. He just stood up because he felt like it, which is the most Frank Hollis thing I can describe. "Hannah," he said. "Welcome home, sweetheart, that's it. That's the whole toast." Carol cried. Derek cried. I held it together because I had a job to do later and I needed my composure intact. The Andrews table was quiet. My mother straightened silverware. Megan scrolled her phone. My father sat with his arms crossed, one hand resting on the outside of his jacket pocket. Waiting. The DJ played. The cake was cut. And my father checked his watch again. The Hollises gave toasts about love. My parents were waiting to give a bill. If you know the difference between a family that opens their arms and a family that opens a ledger, type "I see it" below. Because what happened next is the reason I'm telling this story, and it started when my father stood up, straightened his tie, and reached into his jacket. It happened between the cake and the bouquet toss. The DJ had just finished a set. The dance floor was clearing. People were refilling drinks, finding seats, catching their breath. That's when my father stood up. He didn't rush. Gary Andrews never rushed anything. He stood the way he stood behind the counter at the store. Deliberate, weighted, certain. He buttoned his jacket. He picked up a butter knife. He tapped it against his water glass 3 times. Ting, ting, ting. The room turned. "If I could have everyone's attention," he said. His voice was the voice he used for store announcements, the one that carried from the register to the back wall without effort. "I'd like to say a few words about my daughter." He started warm. He always started warm. "We're so proud of Hannah. Everything she's accomplished. The degree, the career, the life she's built." He paused. Let the warmth settle, then the pivot. "But nobody talks about the cost." Another pause. Longer this time. The room leaned in. "Raising a child isn't cheap. Denise and we sacrificed." He reached into his jacket pocket. Slowly. Like a magician who wanted you to see the trick coming. He pulled out a manila envelope. Not white. Not a card. Manila. Business-sized. He walked toward the head table. He walked the way a man walks when he believes he's owed something. Chin up, shoulders back, righteous. "We've put together a family accounting," he said, "a record of what it cost to raise you, Hannah, and we think it's time to settle up." He laid the envelope in front of me. The room was silent. I looked at Derek. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on the table. I put my hand on his arm. "I've got this," I said. I picked up the envelope. I opened it calmly, the way you open a tax return or a quarterly report. Not with emotion, with process. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Andrew's hardware letterhead, the same letterhead from the family investment agreement I'd signed at 17, the same letterhead I'd grown up seeing on invoices for drill bits and 2x4s. Across the top, in bold, invoice, cost of raising Hannah Marie Andrews, 1994 to 2012. Below that, line items, hospital and delivery, $12,400. Formula and baby supplies, $8,600. Clothing, birth to 18, $24,000. Food, birth to 18, $52,000. Housing, child's share, $54,000. Utilities, child's share, $21,600. Health insurance, child's share, $33,000. School supplies and fees, $14,400. Family vacations, $12,000. Miscellaneous, $8,000. Each number was typed neatly. Each category was capitalized. Someone had spent time on this. Someone had formatted it, printed it, proofread it. At the bottom, in bold, underlined, total, $240,000. Below that, a single line, payable now that you are married and established. I read it twice. The room was watching. 140 people holding their breath. My father stood at the end of the table with his arms folded, chin up, waiting for me to react. Denise sat in her chair with her hands folded in her lap, her face arranged into an expression meant to look dignified but landing somewhere closer to rehearsed. Megan was smiling. Not a warm smile, a satisfied one. The smile of someone who'd helped build this moment and wanted credit for the architecture. I set the invoice flat on the table. I smoothed it with my palm, the way I smooth financial statements before a client meeting. I took a sip of water. $240,000, I said. The cost of raising me, payable immediately. The room reacted the way rooms do when something breaks that wasn't supposed to break. Not with noise, with stillness. Then the whispers started. Carol Hollis covered her mouth with both hands. Frank put his arm around her. Derek started to stand. I felt his weight shift, felt the table move, felt his instinct to protect. I pressed my hand against his knee. Gentle but firm. The way you hold a door shut against wind. He understood. He sat back down. Aunt Margaret was staring at my father. Her face moved through 3 expressions in 5 seconds: confusion, comprehension, disgust. She'd driven 2 hours from Dayton. She'd bought us a KitchenAid mixer. She did not drive here to watch her brother hand his daughter a bill. Megan sat at the family table with her back straight and her chin lifted, watching me the way a chess player watches after a strong opening move. She was proud of this. She'd helped build this. The FedEx receipt, the formatting, the line items. This was her work too. My mother had the face of someone who'd practiced this moment in the mirror and was now realizing the mirror hadn't prepared her for the audience. She looked at the tablecloth. She looked at her hands. She did not look at me. And my father. My father stood at the end of the table with his arms folded like a contractor who'd just delivered a bid and was waiting for the client to sign. Certain. Unmovable. Right. I looked at the invoice one more time. I set it flat. I straightened it so the edges were parallel with the table. Then I folded my hands on top of it and looked up at my father. I was very calm. I am always calm when I am about to do math. Let's go through this, I said. Line by line. My father blinked. He wasn't expecting that. He was expecting tears, or silence, or maybe a quiet, "We'll discuss this later." He wasn't expecting an audit. Hospital and delivery. You've listed $12,400, but you had insurance through the store. Grandpa Paul's group plan. Out of pocket for a standard delivery in 1994 in Ross County was approximately $2,500. I didn't look at notes. I didn't need to. I'd run these numbers at 2 in the morning. Clothing, birth to 18, 24,000. I wore Megan's hand-me-downs until I was 14, at which point I started buying my own clothes with babysitting money. Realistic estimate, 6,000. The room was silent. Not the uncomfortable silence from before. A different kind. The silence of people doing math in their heads and realizing the numbers didn't work. Food. 52,000? I cooked for the family starting at 13. I was on the reduced price lunch program at school, which means the household qualified for federal assistance, which means your actual food cost was significantly less than what you've listed. I paused. Let it breathe. Health insurance. 33,000. You were on a subsidized marketplace plan after Grandpa's group plan ended. The actual increase for adding a dependent was roughly $140 a month. My father's arms unfolded. His hands went to his sides. His jaw was working, but no words were coming out. He'd built this moment as a power play. The father presenting the bill, the daughter accepting the debt. He hadn't prepared for the daughter to pull out a red pen. Family vacations, I continued. 12,000. We went to Myrtle Beach twice and Kings Island 3 times. I'm being generous if I say 5,000. I looked up. I'm not finished. Now, I said, since we're doing invoices. I turned in my chair, not to my father, to Tina. The envelope, please. Tina didn't hesitate. She reached into her clutch, pulled out the white hotel envelope, and handed it to me across the table. Smooth, clean, like we'd rehearsed it, though we hadn't. Tina was just that good. My father's face changed. Not all at once. It was like watching weather shift on a radar map, the colors sliding from confident green to uncertain yellow to something approaching red. His arms dropped. His posture loosened. For the first time all evening, Gary Andrews did not look like a man who was owed something. He looked like a man who realized the bill might go the other way. Denise leaned forward. "What is that?" she asked. Her voice was sharp. Not the voice of a mother, the voice of a co-defendant who just learned there was additional evidence. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the pages, 10 of them, stapled, clean, professional. I held up the cover page so the room could see it. Bold text, centered, formatted the way I formatted every document I'd ever prepared in my career. Invoice. Services rendered to Gary and Denise Andrews, January 2019 to June 2026. Prepared by Hannah Andrews, CPA. I let them read it. I gave the room 5 seconds. 5 seconds of silence while 140 people looked at the cover page and understood that the bride had come prepared. Then I set the pages down on the table, next to my father's invoice, and I straightened them both. 2 invoices, 2 versions of the same family. One calculated what I cost, the other documented what I'd paid. "Let me tell you what's in here," I said. I didn't address my parents. I addressed the room. This was deliberate. My father had made this public. He'd chosen the venue, he'd chosen the audience, so the audience was going to hear both sides. "For 8 years," I said, "I have been sending money to my parents. Every month. Direct deposit. No conditions, no repayment terms, no interest." I paused. Let that land. 87 monthly transfers. Not one of them requested in writing. Every single one requested by phone, usually by my father, sometimes by my mother, occasionally by my sister on their behalf. I turned the page. In addition to the monthly transfers, I covered emergency expenses. Store roof, $14,200. My sister's replacement vehicle, $3,800. My father's knee surgery, $9,400. Store renovation, $22,000. Liability insurance, $4,100. Furnace replacement, $3,200. My sister's credit card debt, $6,400. Property tax shortfall, $8,300. I looked up from the page. I looked at Aunt Margaret. She was gripping the edge of the table. Her face had gone pale. "Some of you," I said, "were told that I haven't helped much, that I've been distant, that I got out and forgot where I came from." Margaret's eyes filled. She turned to look at my father. He didn't meet her gaze. "My parents told some of you that story. I understand why. It's easier to ask for sympathy when your daughter looks ungrateful." I set the page down. I kept records, because that's what I do. I'm a CPA. I track money. I document transactions. I verify claims against evidence. I tapped the stack of pages. This is the evidence. The room was mine now, not my father's, not the DJ's. Mine. And I wasn't finished. I picked up the summary page. Year 1. September 2019 through August 2020. $14,800. That was 28% of my take-home pay. I let the number sit. 28%. More than a tithe. More than rent in some cities. More than I spent on myself that entire year. Year 2. 21,200. I got a raise. The requests got bigger. Year 3. 29,600. That was the year the roof needed replacing. Year 4. 31,400. Megan's car, the furnace. Year 5. 33,800. Dad's knee. Year 6. 42,600. I paused. That was the renovation year. I emptied my emergency fund for that one. Sat in my apartment staring at my bank balance, wondering what I'd do if my own car broke down. I saw Aunt Margaret press her hand to her mouth. I saw Carol Hollis crying without sound, tears running down her face while Frank held her shoulder. I saw guests I barely knew. My father's hardware store regulars, Derek's college friends, co-workers, staring at the Andrews family table with expressions that ranged from shock to arithmetic. Year 7. 34,800. Year 8. January through June. 19,140. I set down the summary page. I picked up the final page, the one with the bold number at the bottom, the one I'd formatted in a hotel business center at 2 a.m. in pajamas with foxes on them. I held it for a moment. Not for drama. I'm not a dramatic person. I held it because I wanted to breathe. Because the number on that page represented 8 years of my life converted into bank transfers. I set it down. I smoothed the paper. Monthly transfers, I said. $181,040. I let the room do the math. They couldn't. Not yet. They needed the rest. Emergency payments, $86,300. I folded my hands on the table. Grand total, $267,340. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind you can feel pressing against your eardrums. Then the gasps. Quiet ones. From different parts of the room, like a wave that didn't know which shore to break on. I picked up my father's invoice. I held it next to mine. Your invoice says I owe you $240,000 for the cost of raising me. I set his down. My records show I've already paid you $267,340 for the privilege of being your daughter. I looked at my father. He'd gone white, then red, then white again, like a traffic light stuck in a loop. His mouth was open. No words. Denise's practiced smile was gone, replaced by something raw and unscripted for the first time all evening. Megan was staring at the table like she could bore through it with her eyes. So, I said, $267,340 minus $240,000 equals $27,340. I let the arithmetic breathe. By your own logic, Dad, you owe me $27,340. Someone in the back of the room inhaled sharply. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." I didn't react to either. I straightened my pages. I set them in a neat stack. But I'm not going to collect. I said it quietly. The room leaned in. Because I never sent that money as a transaction. I sent it because you're my parents. Because you needed help. Because that's what family does. The real version of it. I looked at my father. He was gripping the back of an empty chair. The difference between us, Dad, is that you saw raising me as a cost. I saw helping you as a choice. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Gary Andrews exploded. We gave you everything! His voice cracked through the room like a handclap in a library. His fist came down on the nearest table. Silverware jumped. A water glass tipped, rolled, didn't break. We fed you. We housed you. We clothed you. We gave you everything. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. I stayed in my chair with my hands folded and my back straight, and I looked at my father the way I look at a balance sheet that doesn't reconcile. You gave me a childhood, I said. That's what parents do. It's not a loan. Don't you lecture me. He slammed the table again. This time, a plate jumped off the edge and shattered on the floor. Megan flinched. Denise stared at the tablecloth. Don't you sit there in your fancy dress with your fancy degree and tell me what parents do. Dad. My father. He started. I finished it for him. Your father told you children are bills. I know. You told me that when I was 12. That stopped him. His hand was still raised. His face was crimson. But the words landed somewhere deep, somewhere underneath the anger, and for 1 second his eyes changed. Not softened. Shifted. Like a man catching a glimpse of himself in a window he didn't know was there. Carol Hollis stood up. She was 5'3" and 62 years old, and she spoke with the quiet authority of a woman who'd managed classrooms for 30 years. Gary, she said, the only person who made this about money is you. Denise stood. Her chair scraped against the floor. Her face was wet. She leaned toward Gary and whispered something. I was close enough to hear it. I just wanted you to need me. Then she walked to the door. Gary followed. Megan grabbed her purse and followed them both. The door closed. The room was still. I sat there for a moment, just breathing. The room was watching me the way you watch someone who just survived something. Carefully, quietly, waiting to see if they're okay before you move. Derek's hand found mine under the table. His fingers wrapped around my palm and squeezed. Not hard. Just there. I squeezed back. Then I stood up. I straightened my dress. I smoothed the front of it with both hands, the same way I'd smooth the invoices, because apparently that's what I do when I need to feel steady. I looked at the room, 137 people staring back at me, confused, sympathetic, still processing, some of them crying, all of them present. I think we've had enough speeches, I said. A few people laughed. Nervous, grateful, relieved laughter. The kind that means thank God somebody said something. I turned to the DJ, a 20-something kid in a vest who'd been standing behind his laptop with his mouth open for the last 10 minutes. "Play something good," I said. He blinked. Then he grinned. "Yes, ma'am." 3 seconds later, the opening piano notes of Dancing Queen by ABBA filled the Elks Lodge like a permission slip. Tina clapped her hands once, loud, like a starting gun. Kevin Park whistled with 2 fingers. Carol Hollis stood up from her table, wiped her face with a napkin, and started swaying. And then the room erupted. Not in applause, though there was some. In movement. People stood. People clapped. People walked to the dance floor because that's what you do when someone tells you the storm is over and the music is playing. Derek pulled me to the center of the floor. He held me close. We were laughing and crying at the same time, and neither of us tried to stop either one. The reception went on for 3 more hours. People danced. People drank. People came up to me one by one and said things I'll never forget. "I had no idea," said Derek's college roommate, a man I'd met exactly twice. "I had no idea your family was like that." A woman from my father's hardware store, someone I recognized from my childhood but couldn't name, took my hand and said, "Your father always talked about you like you owed him something." I always thought it was a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was a worldview. Aunt Margaret found me near the bar. She was trembling. Her mascara had given up an hour ago. She took both my hands and held them and said, "Gary told me you never helped. He said you were too busy with your career. He said you'd forgotten the family." I believed him, Hannah. I'm so ashamed. I looked at my aunt. This woman who'd sent me birthday cards every year, who'd come to my college graduation, who'd driven 2 hours with a KitchenAid mixer on her passenger seat because she wanted to celebrate me. My father had lied to her. He'd lied to all of them. "He told you a story," I said. "I just told the rest of it." Near midnight, Derek and I sat on the lodge steps. The parking lot was half empty. The DJ was packing up. Inside, a few holdouts were still dancing to whatever song he'd put on last. The air smelled like October. Wood smoke and dry leaves, and the kind of cold that means summer is officially over. "I'm sorry about your parents," Derek said. "I'm sorry you had to see it." He put his arm around me. "I married you because of who you are," he said. "Now I know what it cost you to become." 1 week later, the phone calls started. Not from my parents, from everyone else. Cousins, family friends, people from church. The narrative my parents had built. The ungrateful daughter, the struggling store, the family carrying the weight. Collapsed in a single evening, and now the pieces were landing on their doorstep. Megan texted me on Tuesday. "You humiliated them." I read it, set my phone down, and went back to work. There was nothing to say to that sentence that it didn't already answer for itself. Denise called on Thursday. She'd been crying. I could hear it in the spaces between her words, the way her breath hitched before each sentence. "You could have just said no, Hannah. You could have pulled us aside. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone. You could have not presented it at my wedding, Mom." Silence. Then she hung up. Gary emailed on Friday. An email, not a call. He couldn't face my voice, so he typed, "We expected better from you. Your mother is devastated. The family is talking. I hope you're satisfied." I read it once. I did not reply. On Saturday morning, I opened my banking app. I found the recurring transfer. $2,000 per month to Gary and Denise Andrews. Direct deposit. Every first of the month for 3 years running. I canceled it. I watched the confirmation screen for a long time. Then I opened a new recurring transfer. $500 per month. Not to my parents. To a 529 college savings plan. I didn't attach a name. There was no child yet. Just the plan. Just the account. Just the quiet decision to take the money I'd been pouring into a hole and put it somewhere it would grow instead of disappear. No ledger, no invoice, just in case. 3 weeks after the wedding, my father called. It was a Sunday morning. I was making pancakes. Derek was reading the paper. The phone buzzed on the counter and I saw the name and I let it ring 3 times before I picked up. "Hannah." His voice was different, smaller. Not the voice from the store counter. Not the voice from the reception. The voice of a man who'd been getting phone calls from people who now knew the truth. "People are calling," he said. "About the money." "I know." "What are you telling them?" "Nothing, Dad. They're saying the truth. They're saying what my spreadsheet showed. I haven't called anyone. I haven't posted anything. I haven't had to." Silence. Long enough that I checked to make sure the call was still connected. "What do you want?" he asked. I'd thought about this. I'd thought about it on the drive home from the wedding, and in the shower, and at my desk at work, and during the quiet moments before sleep. I knew exactly what I wanted. "I want you to stop keeping score. I want you to look at me and see a daughter, not a return on investment. I want Megan to build her own life instead of sitting behind your counter resenting mine." I heard him breathe. "And the monthly check," I said. "It's done. It was never a payment. It was never a repayment. It was help, given freely, and it was never once acknowledged. So it's done." "Your grandfather," he started, "was wrong, Dad." I said it gently. Not as an accusation, as a fact. "The way you state a number that's been verified. Grandpa Paul was wrong. Children are not bills. Raising a family is not an investment portfolio. And the fact that he taught you otherwise is the saddest thing about this whole story." He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he hung up. 6 months later, spring. Derek and I bought a house in Westerville, a 3-bedroom Cape Cod with a porch and a backyard and a garage where you could actually park a car. I got promoted to senior manager at the firm. Derek's overpass project in Delaware County finished ahead of schedule. We planted tomatoes. We adopted a cat named Receipts, because Derek thought he was funny and I didn't disagree. I stopped calling my parents. I called Aunt Margaret instead. She became the family bridge, the one who told me what was happening in Chillicothe without the filter my parents had been running for a decade. Margaret sent cards now. Inside each one she wrote the same thing: no invoice attached. It made me laugh every time. In April, Megan texted me. Not an accusation this time, just a text. Got a job. She'd been hired full-time at the Ross County Clerk's office. Benefits, steady hours, a paycheck that was hers. I texted back, "Proud of you." She didn't respond, but she didn't have to. In May, my mother left a voicemail. I was in a meeting. I listened to it in the parking lot afterward, sitting in my car with the windows down. "Hannah, it's Mom. I just wanted to say, I was wrong. I was wrong about a lot of things. I don't expect you to call back. I just needed you to hear it." I saved the voicemail. I didn't call back. Not yet. But I saved it. My father hasn't called. The store is still open. Margaret says he works longer hours now, comes home quieter. Nobody asks me for money. The spreadsheet is still on my laptop. I never deleted it. Not because I need it, because some records are worth keeping. Not as weapons, but as proof that the truth was always there. Some debts aren't paid in dollars. Some debts aren't debts at all. Love is not a ledger. The people who raised you gave you something that can't be invoiced, and the moment they try, you have every right to show them the receipts. A manila envelope at a wedding, a $240,000 bill for being born, a spreadsheet printed at 2 a.m. in hotel pajamas, and a bride who decided that the most powerful thing she could say wasn't, "How dare you?" It was, "Here's the math." If someone ever handed you an invoice for being loved, tell me about it in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you never miss one. Thank you for listening.